Hi there, Mark here again, and welcome to part 2 of my build guide for the Tamiya Hotshot. In part 1 we got to step 8 and we ended up completing the rear gearbox and the front gearbox, as you can see, ready to go. So let's jump straight into step 9, which is the rear suspension. So as usual, before we start building, best to get all the parts laid out, check them off against the diagram there on the left. And as you can see, I've already made up one side of the suspension because both sides are the same basically. So it should end up looking something like this, and we'll just see how we got there. So first of all, get your black threaded shaft, 32mm long, and you want 2 of the black ball ends, which are MT ones, and basically just screw one on each end. And once you've got them started, just screw it up against each other. And then you can use the diagram here. It is to scale, just to make sure you've got it the right length. And then we've got to pop in this ball joint, which is MB5, and I think the easiest way to do this is just to use a socket or something like this. Just put it over the top and just press down, and yeah, that's connected. I'm making up the left side of the suspension now, so you need this part R2. Copy the alignment of the diagram. Put your small ball joint into this hole. And these are very hard plastic, so make sure you don't over tighten this ball connector. Just a nip up will do. And in this alignment, just need to pop on that bottom ball joint. Again, I'm just going to press down on the table. There we go. Then you want part D8. Just press in your bearings or your bushings, one in each side. Pop in your wheel axle, which is MR14. And I do recommend just popping in a R-clip just to hold that in place so it doesn't fall out. And your 32mm screw pin, just put a bit of grease on that. I do advise putting grease on these because they will rust really easily. Just a very thin coating will do. And pop that into the arm. Push the pin through as far as it will go. And then just nip that up. And there you go, that's step 9. In step 10 we're going to attach the upper arms, so for that you're going to need the gearbox assembly that you've done earlier, and just copy the alignment of the diagram so you've got it in this position. Then you want part R4, and then this pin, which is BC7, that just goes through that hole there like that, and it's a very tight fit. Again, 32mm screw pin, and that goes in the top here. And give that screw pin a nip up. And then exactly the same for this side, this time with part R3. Pop that pin through. And then the screw pin exactly the same as before. In step 11 we're going to attach the rear suspension, the lower arms that we did earlier, so I'm just going to do the left side. So just get the bottom lined up and pop in MS2 screw pin, which is the long 46mm pin. And just get that done up. Obviously put a bit of grease on those pins. Then you want your rear drive shaft, which is the lighter of the 2 drive shafts. You can see this is the front one, I think, with the ridge in it, and it's black, so yeah, this one, don't get them mixed up. Pop that in the output drive cup and pop the other end in the wheel shaft. Then we can align the top holes and pop in the shorter 32mm screw pin. And then repeat for the other side. And at the end of step 11 it should look something like this. Now steps 12 and 13 are all about putting the front suspension and steering components together, and I've already done the right hand side, which is this one here and down here, and you'll end up with something looking like this. So we'll just go through putting the left hand side together. It's exactly the same but opposite. So the first thing we need to do is get the upright. So step 12 is doing the front upright, which is this thing. Now make sure you don't use the one that's on the parts tree. This came on a separate tiny little sprue there, and the left and right sides are exactly the same, you just reverse them. So the first thing we want to do is make sure we get this in the same orientation as the part in the diagram, which is like that. So the first thing we'll do is get part MB3, which is the 5mm long ball connector, and that's going to go underneath into the outside of the two holes. There we go. Now we need to get the metal plate, which is MP2, and you've got to make sure you get this the right way up. There's like raised parts where the holes have been punched out. Those need to point downwards on the top, and then plastic part D6 has got like a chamfered edge or a beveled edge to it, and that bevel needs to point the open side to the top, as you might be able to just see in the diagram there. Then you want your large ball connector, which is an MB4, and we just got to screw that into the top here. And note that the threads are formed into these holes on the top and the bottom, so make sure you don't get it cross-threaded. Just want to make sure that's away from the actual upright itself, and we'll get that tightened up. As you can see, it does show putting grease on these, but I'm going to put some dry lubricant onto these when it's finished. So same again for the bottom. This time the raised parts on the plate point upwards. The open end of that chamfer on the plastic part points down, and again just get that large ball screwed into the bottom. And that's the end of step 12. As I said, for step 13 I've already done the right hand side, so going to complete the left hand side. Get plastic part C3, and then again you want this MB5 stabiliser ball, and we need to pop that into one end. Again, I'm going to use my socket for this. There we go. Then we want the top arm, which is F4, and then we want MB2, which is the 5mm ball connector, and that's going to go in that hole there. Then get your part C3 that we just did, and we need to pop that on like so. Okay, so now the fun begins. So we get the upright, make sure that the ball is pointing downwards and backwards. We need to get this lined up. So we want that hole there in that metal plate lining up with this hole here in the top arm. Then the 3/8 countersunk screw can be put into that hole there, the countersunk hole, and hopefully we can just hold this all in place with that screw. Now I recommend you don't do this up tightly. What we need to do is get all these screws in before we finally nip them up at the end, because now you've got to rotate that red part so that the three holes line up. And if you can see through that there, but you need to do that so you can get your small tiny little 2x6 screw to go through the two plastic parts and into the metal plate at the bottom. So that's one, there's the second one, and the third. And once they're all in and it's all lined up, we can give them a final nip up. Okay, so that's the top bit done. Should be moving quite nice and freely like this. It's simply a case of getting the bottom arm, which is F1 for the left hand side anyway, and we need to get the same thing again, get these lined up and pop that BB2 countersunk screw in again. That will hold it all together, and put in the 3 screws as we did earlier, like so. Just need to get the pin BC7, pop that through this hole like that. Then your bushing or bearing, one in each side of the upright. They are a very tight fit, I've got to say. Your wheel axle, I prefer to put the bearing on and then push it in and make sure it's seated right into the upright. Might help to give that a push with a screwdriver, make sure it's all the way. I'll just secure that with an R-clip. And with both sides done, that is the end of step 13. On step 14, we're going to attach those uprights we've just made, or the suspension components, onto the front gearbox. So copying the orientation of the diagram, get the right hand side, that goes on there. The 46mm screw pin, the longest that we got in the kit. And just get that lined up, making sure that this is in the right position so it stops up against that lug on the gearbox casing, like so. Get your front drive shafts, which are the black ones, and pop that into the output cup and into the wheel shaft. This is when you need 3 hands. You need to get that top arm now located onto the mount on the gearbox there, or try not to lose your drive shaft at the same time. And then it's your 32mm screw pin that just holds that in. It should look like this when you've done, and just do exactly the same for the other side. So there you go, there's the front suspension assembly all done. We matched that up, we've got the rear assembly finished as well. So this seems a good point to draw a close to this part 2 of my build guide. I hope you've found it useful, I hope you enjoyed it, and I also hope that you catch me on the next one. Cheers!